So welcome everyone at the Innovation Café. We just had a talk with Matthijs van Wijk from the TU Ecomotive, and we're just going into the Q&A now. We have already some questions here, so let's start with that straight away. So the first question is, what's next with lessons consult with the car industry? Matthijs.
Yes, so we really built the car as a proof of concept. So we are not planning to put it into mass production. We also admit that a car that actually put into mass production needs way more research than what we did. So we really want to show what's already possible, and we hope to inspire people with it, and of course also the car industry. And well, we revealed the car officially in October of 2020. And after that, we got also a lot of response, also from car companies. So I think the Daimler car group, which we got in contact with via the UBQ material, they are interested to have us come over once, but now we have to wait a bit till it's possible. And we also got a lot of other requests. So for example, VDL, which is also a sponsor of us, is actually looking if they can implement something like that into their buses. Harper, they built trailers, is interested in looking if they can implement some of the materials into their products. So it's really in the beginning phase, but we had a lot of conversations with interested people, and now it's basically we have to wait a few years and hope that to see them actually back, which would be great, of course.
We have more questions. So you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation that you have no limits, basically, which you're saying is a positive. But Ernst mentions that engineers usually strive for constraints. How did you elicit the requirements for this car?
We started in the beginning. It's been quite a while, so I have to think back a bit. But we started with some requirements. So of course we had 4 previous cars. Which all at their positives, but also some negatives, of course. So there are always lessons that you take from that. So we started listing some of the requirements that we wanted. So quite soon we knew that we wanted to build actually a two-person car, and more like that it should have sufficient range. So to drive, I think 2 hours on highway speed. So that's why the 220 kilometers actually satisfies that. At some point, we knew that we actually want to go into the waste, and from that point onwards, basically the goal to make the chassis, the body, and the interior. So really the big parts of the car, to make that all out of waste material. And of course, there are some parts that we left out of it because it's simply for us too much time. So a good example is, for example, the steering rack, which is quite a complicated part. So things like that we decided to just buy in, so we can actually focus more on the big parts. So does that answer your question?
Ernst,
yes, I guess so. Yeah. So you had indeed a lot of freedom.
Yeah, indeed.
Of course. You chose then.
Sorry.
You then chose what suited your personal taste, so to speak.
I think also, one of the things that we really wanted, and also some of the personal taste, was to build a nice car. The predecessor was the blue one, and we got some mixed responses from people about the looks of it. So I think also, one of the things that I really wanted as well was to build actually a nice car. That's why we went a bit towards the sporty route. And for the rest, it was mostly the team dynamics. So there we set basically a basic road, and then it was up to mostly the engineers to actually come up with solutions for that. So I think in general it was also really a team effort to go towards the requirements.
And on even a higher level, one of my questions was also why a car? Why not a dishwasher or a humanoid robot or a microwave oven? So that was kind of the framework. There was already a competition for cars and a tradition to do that at TUE, and that's why. And you all
It's a bit because of the tradition of the team. We of course started really participating in the Shell Eco Marathon, where you have to actually build a car. So then back then it was quite easy to choose for the car. And basically it stuck around when we decided not to participate anymore. And I think it's also a really nice way because cars are something that everybody can grasp. Everyone knows what it is. Everyone has their opinions about it. And it's really a big industry that also has a lot of both positive and negative impacts, of course. So that's why we decided to stick with the car. But in principle, also that when the next team started next year, they can also build other things. Now, for example, some people are opting to build actually a bike, like a motorbike instead of a car. So perhaps who knows that within a few years there will not be a TU ecomotive car, but actually a TU ecomotive bike.
Nice.
Okay, thanks a lot. I have another question, but I will add it in the comments for now.
Thanks. We have a question also, why did you use Flex from France while it's also available in the Netherlands? I
think it has a bit to do also with the partners. So part of the Flex is also sponsored. And there was a really nice company in France that has been supporting us for several years. So we decided also to stick with that. Great, perfect.
There's a question, I may have missed it, but the electric motor, so the engine, was that also built from waste, or is that one of the parts that you decided to focus on and just buy it instead?
Yeah, this is the second part. So we also admit that it's almost entirely made out of waste, not completely. And we are sure that the materials in electric motors can also be made from recycled parts, so the copper, for example. But since we have 1 year to build a car with 22 students, it is for us not feasible to actually develop motors ourselves. There are some other teams at the Eindhoven University of Technology, like the team that participates in the Solar Challenge. They have a bit more resources compared to how many hours people can put in, and they actually also build their own motors. But for us, it's simply not doable due to time.
Great. Then Aaron's second question, that's also a question that I wanted to include actually, because you're talking a lot about recycling and reducing your waste. But can you share a little bit about how recyclable or the recyclability of the car as it is now? Because you're also saying like you're putting a lot of materials together. How can you recycle that? Did you put that into account when building the car?
Yes, we also looked into that. Basically the biggest problem when recycling is if different materials get mixed together. That's also especially when plastics needs to get recycled, that's a really big problem. So for example, when we look at the body, the outside of the car, that's fully made out of ABS. So it's one really pure plastic, and it can therefore be really recycled really easily. We also didn't put a lacquer on it, but we wrapped it. So it's basically a tin foil that sticks to the plastic and can be removed easily. And because it's actually made to go onto original car paint, it doesn't leave any glue residues when you put it off. So that also increases the stream. Also for the panel, the composite that we use for the chassis, we also made some big improvements compared to previous time. So previous time, some of the parts were glued together, which reduced the recyclability. We however made use of a thin film layer that gets sticky when it gets warm. So then it got heated up and pressed together. And when you heat it up again, it also loses some of the strength. So you can easily remove the 3 parts, and separate the 3 parts from each other again. Well, the middle part is made fully out of recycled PET balls, so you can recycle that again. And the outside layers can also be recycled. They will lose some of the strength because the plate will get shredded and the fibers will get shorter. But in general, you can still do that a lot and implement it into other applications.
That's great to hear. And then would you also be able to reuse that within a next car, or would you say like it would have to be reused into maybe other fields or other disciplines?
Yeah, well, it really depends on what part of the car. If this is for interior applications or, for example, a bottom plate, then it's definitely doable. But when it really needs to have the structural strength, then it gets a different story. However, we did hear that one of the companies that was helping us with it is actually looking into combining the both. So have a combination of fresh fibers combined with some of the parts. So that's also some promising looks for upcoming years.
I can imagine that also has to do with the safety of it. Can you share a little bit about how safe this car is compared to a normal car?
Yeah, it is. I have to say it's a bit less safe. We were still planning originally to get a license plate on the car. However, due to time, we didn't manage to actually reach that point. And yeah, we fell into a concept class within the RDW, the Dutch Vehicle Authorization. Because if you make less than 5 cars, you don't have to do the crash tests, for example. It would of course be a shame if you built one really nice car and have to send it into a wall with 80 kilometers per hour. So that we did do some simulations just to make sure that it's not completely unsafe to drive. But still, it's really hard to it's not comparable to actual road cars. For example, we also don't have a crumple zone, but it should definitely be possible to actually make crumple zones out of this material. What you can do is you can basically make cones of this material, and when you press in the cone, of course, the further you press it in, the more material you have to move, and that acts like a crumple zone. So there are definitely ways to actually make safe cars this way, but ours is a bit less safe.
Okay, that makes sense. And I guess that's also one of the reasons why maybe these techniques have not been fully implemented yet in the car industry in that way, because I guess it's safety first foremost.
Yeah, it can be. It will definitely need more research. You also know from the RDW that they really want strict numbers when looking at safety, which of course makes sense. So, for example, the seat belts that we put on, we actually had to put some steel plates between the panels, just to make sure that we actually fulfill the requirements of the RDW. And but even though it should still work with just the flex, but they want real test data on it, which costs a lot of time to generate.
Then I go back to some questions from our audience. The new Citroën electric car has seats made from recycled seat plastic. How can we motivate the car industry to do more?
That's I think in general it's quite a difficult way to motivate the car industry. What I think that we will see is that currently we are in the transition to the electric cars, as companies are looking for. But yeah, I hope and I think that after this transition to electric cars, they will also start to need to improve on emissions, the production processes. Because of course, it's still a huge part of actual car building. And at some point, I think the car companies also realize that they need to switch to sustainable materials as well. And I think that these kind of materials will be implemented into the interior first. And hopefully we can show that it's also possible to put it actually into structural parts. But also from the conversations we had with car companies or other manufacturers, it came also out that they mostly want to look indeed into interior applications. And how can we actually motivate the car industry? We hope that's one of the points we hope to do with this car, show that it's really possible, and show that there are so many different applications for waste. And in that way, I hope definitely hope that more car companies will follow Citroën in this way.
Thank you. Then Hans asks that he's interested in the design and decision process that you followed. Can you share a little bit about what stages you entered and who took the lead in that?
Of course. The design process was also quite a long process. We had 3 designers actually working on the car. Well, it first started with some initial sketches, of course. But at the same time, our mechanical team was looking into the first concepts of the chassis. Because they would have to collaborate really closely so everything fits. So then they worked more together towards a more final sketch. And at some point, the mechanical team gave some sort of package of these are our mechanical parts, and the design needs to fit around that. And then basically went to the next stage after the sketches were there. So they made tape drawings. Basically with tape you can really see the lines and you can make smooth transitions. So basically really thin tape that you can move also really easily. And then I made a tape drawing out of the car. And then more fun part happened. We actually made a clay model. They did a lot of claying, our designers, and that's actually comparable to what they actually do in the car industry. However, there they make a 1:1 scale, and that's a bit too much for us. So we made a 1:5 scale. So I think the clay model was something like this big. And then you can really see how the car looks from different angles, different lightings. Actually get a real concept of what it looks like. Then when the clay model was ready, it got scanned. So we used a 3D scanner on the university. And then we got basically a file with all kinds of dots, basically all the measurements from the 3D scanner. And then the final job was to actually make solid plates out of those points. And that did us with a complete 3D model of the car, which was then used to actually produce the body panels.
Great. Hope that answers your question, Hans. I have another. Oh, Hans.
Well, it's a bit I want to ask more. I mean, you had to decide on what products you're going to use. How did you do that?
That was so more the design of also the other parts of the car. And that was done basically a lot of collaboration with our partners. So we have a lot of the companies that actually supply us with material, and then basically we went there, had a conversation, what they thought was possible, and then we also had some of our input. And one of the back in 2019, for example, the sea plastic was really a hot topic. Because with the ocean cleanup came with new solutions, actually gather the plastic, and a lot of people want to use it. So at that point we thought, we can use normal recycled material, or we can actually try to use this plastic out of the ocean. And it was a bit of a challenge to actually get it working, but it worked eventually. So it was also So that's how we, for example, got to the plastic. As for the exterior, we really wanted to use a wrap instead of a lacquer in order to make it more sustainable. So then we asked the company what kind of plastics would you recommend where the wrap can stick nicely to. And then with that list, we went to the company that actually made the body panels, and as well what do you advise for the plastic to use. And one of them was the APS that's actually used. And of course, we also looked a bit into what properties were, how good they were recyclable, and that got all taken into account. And that's basically how we got to a decision.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question about this as well, because I mean, you're mentioning that you have partners from which you get materials. Do you feel, I mean, obviously it's great that these partners are there for you to help you out with building this car. But I was wondering, because I mean, there's a lot of material research going on right now on innovative materials and to see how these things are being, how these things can be used. Thanks, Brian. I'm wondering, do you also have contact with other material research departments to keep updated with the developments in these types of fields, and whether these are things that you might be able to implement and look for new partners in these fields?
Not that much. I think as far as I know, we're the only team that tries to actually implement this into cars. I think for the rest, a lot of the bio-based materials are used in different applications. But we also make, I think the companies that we use also have big R&D researchers. So one of the biggest is Sabic, which is yes, in Limburg, a company, and they have a really big R&D department for looking into composites. So that's we mostly get the information from those sources.
Okay, so that's basically, I mean, you do have connections with material research departments. It's just that it's via one of the partners that you have, basically.
Yeah. In general, we have need the contact with more the R&D departments, because of course we want to do general things that haven't been done before. So put it into applications that hasn't been done. So that's where we get the information.
Great. We have another question asking, did you use technology from other industries, and could other industries learn from the results?
Well, of course, the second question is definitely a yes. Of course, not only the automotive industry generates waste, but also a lot of other industries have that. So I think we also wanted to do it a bit broader and also focus on other parts. So I think every company and every part can benefit from being made out of waste or being made out of more sustainable materials. So from that point of view, I would definitely say yes. And the use of technology from other industries, it's of course a car is something that can be done. Where a lot of parts can actually be used in different applications as well. So, for example, I mentioned the conversation with the company that supplies our trailer, Hybrid. Perhaps it's a bit similar to a car, but it can still be used in there. And for example, also the use of ABS as a plastic goes way farther than just the automotive industry. And I think also that bio-based materials and composites are also broader than just the automotive industry. That's again, of course, we are originally a car team, and a car is something really nice that people can grasp and everyone knows, but it can definitely go far beyond that.
Great. Can you share a little bit? Do you have any idea of the lifespan of the cars that you make?
It's of course hard to say because the cars aren't that old. But of course, one big advantage that we have is that since there isn't really much metals in there, the cars don't rust. It's just a massive problem for especially some of the older cars, and that's something that we don't have. So I think they did a few years back when they started one of the first cars. They did some research on how the material should act. And especially looking at flex combined with plastics in the long term. And I think what they concluded is that it's at least similar to regular cars. So that shouldn't be a reason to not go this way.
Okay. And did you also take into account there, for example, that, I mean, at the moment we have some snow here. It's not very common that we have that. Did you also take into account these extreme temperatures of a lot of heat or like a lot of cold?
Yeah, I think some of the cars have some different body styles, which are a bit more susceptible to change in temperatures. But in general, especially the composites used in the chassis don't really have that much fluctuations in there. No. And well, it's it's actually a layer of plastic on the flex, so also it getting wet shouldn't prevent the strength basically.
Great. Ernst is asking, how repairable is the material?
That's I think that's indeed a difficult point. From that point of view, because we made use of a composite, it is quite similar to the way carbon fiber should be repaired, which is as far as I know indeed more difficult than a metal repair. So I think definitely there are some possibilities for further research. We haven't looked that much into it because, well, we hope our cars don't crash, of course. But yeah, I think it is from that point harder to repair than a car made out of metals.
Just gonna see if there's. I think I went through most of my questions. I don't know if there's any other questions from the rest of our audience. If so, then I give you a moment to reply. Can you, because I mean, at the moment, I guess there's not really any real, like, I mean, normal cars have like a GPS or something like that included. Are these things also, are you including that in the car as well, or is it really just focusing on having a driving car, which I can imagine is already plenty of challenge in its own?
Yeah, we had some ideas for regarding the infotainment system, but unfortunately we didn't get to it due to delays. But basically our idea of that was that to not actually put a really big screen and another computer into the car. So we thought, well, everyone already has their phone, which is basically a computer in their pocket. So what we wanted to do was actually put the phone into a phone holder in the middle of the car that would actually switch to Android Auto. Yeah, it's just basically an Android version also running on a lot of newer cars. But in that way, you would actually get the infotainment for your phone. So that's basically what we were envisioning, but unfortunately, we didn't get to that.
Fair enough. Maybe for the next version.
Would be great to see it implemented there.
So currently, you guys are. I mean, you are started with the next car. Do you have an estimate of when? I mean, COVID taking into account, of course. Do you have any idea how it's going to look for you in the future? Are you already on the verge of creating a new car, or how far are you in the process?
Well, we are currently still looking for some new team members. So we are now recruiting an entirely new team that will take over from this summer. So perhaps if there are some students watching that want to do something more besides the study, then well, feel free to contact us. And then we hope that well, in the beginning of September, so at the new academic year, a fully new team can start, which then also will basically build a car in 1 year. So by what is it, the summer of 2022, there should be a new car from the team.
There's another question coming in. So try to make it a bit quick because we're running out of time, but can you give already an idea of what the challenge is for that new car, or will that be decided later?
No, I actually don't know. The challenge for the car is something that we really want to give to the new team. Of course, they need to build a car, so they need to have a concept that they really like and that they are enthusiastic about. So, of course, there are some things that we recommend. So, for example, the combining of the flagships with actual flags, or in general, the composites, the fibers. That's something we recommend. And I think they started their brainstorm somewhere last week, but I'm actually not sure entirely what came out of it. But it's really something for a new team to decide on.
Well, perhaps in a bit of time, someone from the new team can join us and tell us all about it, and we can have a new session about it.
Indeed, it would be great to see the new car also on this channel.
Great. Well, so far then I want to conclude the Q&A for now. So I really want to thank you, Matthijs, for answering all of the questions and everyone joining us to ask their questions. I hope everyone found it very interesting, and we hope to see you all again next week, and have a good evening.
Thanks for being here, and thanks for the interest.